Looking to get started in PE? Check out the masculinehealthsolutions.com ebook available now titled How to Get a Bigger Penis. All right, so all you guys looking to make gains in the male enhancement, penis enlargement, penis enhancement realm, this book is for you. And if you're a beginner, this is just the book you may have been looking for. So be sure to check it out at masculinehealthsolutions.com. The link is in the description below. Again, the book is titled How to Make Your Penis Bigger, and it will offer you all the knowledge and know-how that you need to get started on your PE journey. All right, without any further ado, let's jump on in. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Masculine Health Solutions Podcast, where we talk about everything related to men's health, whether it's penis enlargement, male enhancement, or having the best sex of your life, or mental development, whatever, it is that we're going to talk about when it comes to the subject of men's health. We will discuss it all here, no holds barred, and nothing is left off the table. I'm your host, CJ Rodriguez, fat loss coach. That is what I do and what I love doing. And today's discussion is exactly about something that I think is actually plaguing a lot more men, right? And a lot of guys just have trouble even talking about it because it's one of those things that's kind of embarrassing, right? It leads to erectile difficulties, libido issues, having, just bad testosterone or low testosterone levels is not something sexy that people want to talk about. However, what is pretty cool is that a lot of people are talking about TRT and optimizing their health. But in the case of Sander Van Stee, who's been on the podcast before and who is the man behind the regenerative farming company that he has, and he is a farmer who's looking for optimal health, right? But let's go back a little bit, because this story isn't so much about the farming, it's about him and his story and how he actually got basically some results that told him, like, bro, you are in very, very shitty condition, to put it bluntly. And as a dude, he was suffering. And today's episode really is all about what he did to get optimized, essentially, and how he went about doing it, how he used fasting, how he got his test levels back up, and how he didn't necessarily reach for the TRT right off the bat. Even though it was on the table, he looked for the other ways to go about it, which is something that I know a lot of guys are always kind of asking me about, like, hey man, how do I optimize my health? How do I optimize my test levels? Well, this story is about exactly that. We dive into diet, fasting, all the beautiful, supplements, the stuff that he did that really got him back on track. And one of the big things is diet. And yes, he has access to stuff that we just don't, right? Like raw milk. Shouts out to raw milk, even though it is now banned and illegal, but we know it works wonders for the human body. That being said, his story is all about how he employed all these different things to get himself back on track. And there's a lot of things that I think you guys can take and apply and, use to your advantage in this life. So without any further ado, let's jump into today's episode with none other than Sander Van Stee. Oh, and if you want to follow him on any of his socials, be sure to click the links in the description. All right, let's go. Before we get started, one more thing. If you want to get any PE gear, be sure to check out TotalManShop.com. That is TotalManShop.com. And use the promo code MHS2020. Promo code is MHS2020 and get 12% off. Be sure to check out their wide variety of all kinds of good quality PE equipment. All right? And that's promo code MHS2020 for 12% off. And the website, once again, is TotalManShop.com. What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Masculine Health Solutions Podcast. We got Sander Van Stee on the episode once again. First and foremost, Sander, how are you today, man?
Doing really well. Thanks for having me on.
No, it's always a pleasure. And honestly, last time, learned a lot, man. Learned a lot about regenerative farming. Learned a lot about things that I had no idea about. And like you said, in your profile that I read as well, it's like we all say, or we've heard the word before when it comes to regenerative farming, but nobody really knows anything about it. And most of us are clueless. It's kind of like when it comes to health and we hear all these different things. And for the most part, nobody has any idea. But that's the one thing that I did want to touch on this time and focus on that was about your story and your journey and how you got healthy. So if you could start us off on that journey, basically at the genesis, that beginning point of like, how you got started looking into your health and started to take care of it because obviously something was off.
Yeah, I touched a bit on it last time. The timing of it was pretty ironic because it was right when we were building our new dairy barn and
Yeah.
right when the cow's health started really improving. And the right at that same time, that's when my own health started to slip. And it was kind of hard to pinpoint at first because the health struggles that I had was very much hormonal. My testosterone crashed to single digits. And
Jeez.
and it was it's hard to pinpoint because hormones affect your entire body. So I had
Yeah.
like a long list of symptoms that didn't seem very related, and they're all kind of almost more irritations and annoyances. But the one thing that gave me a strong red flag that something's definitely off is that I had no libido for months at a time. I was like, and it happens more often where you're just tired and you had a hard week or something like that.
Yeah.
Months of a low libido. I was like, what's going on? So then I went to my family doctor and I told him like there's something off my libido. I think I got low testosterone. And he just kind of looked me up and down, asked me to take my shirt off, saw that I had some muscle tone, body hair. Like, you're fine.
That was it?
Like, that was it. And I was like, I insisted. So I was like, I really think there's something going on with my testosterone. So because he didn't believe it, I had to pay for the test out of pocket. And I'm
Phew.
glad I did because yeah, it was very, very low levels of testosterone, like grandpa levels of testosterone.
Huh.
So then yeah, that started the whole journey, just looking into that and being like, what are the risk factors of low testosterone and like things like you're losing muscle mass and then like you have the chance of growing breasts and stuff like that. And I was like, well, shoot, I don't want any of that. So I started exercising because I didn't want to lose the muscle tone that I already had. And I have a physical job, but physical labor is great for building up your work capacity and your
Mhm.
endurance, but not really putting on muscle mass or maintaining muscle mass in the case when you don't have testosterone. But so I started exercising that same time, and then also bouncing from doctor to doctor, trying to figure out why is my testosterone so low? What's going on? Lots of blood work, lots of tests. They had me. They're testing for all sorts of rare genetic diseases and stuff like that. They couldn't figure out what was going on, and I went from like one doctor to another, and then I was like driving to Toronto, which is like a 2, sometimes 3 hours with the
Oh
traffic.
yeah, Trav.
Not there. It's like it's a whole day ordeal just to visit the doctor for 10, 20 minutes. It was a
Jeez.
nightmare. And all he really could this like he was a super specialized doctor and very qualified, but all he really could do for me was give me some hormone replacement therapy, which brought my testosterone up, but I still didn't feel 100%. It's
Yeah.
still not where it should be, despite my testosterone levels being normal. My energy levels weren't what they should be. And it was just very frustrating. And I was constantly just pushing the doctors, like, what else could it be? Like, years and years of that. And then the doctor's venture is like, man, you gotta just accept it. Like, there's not really a good reason for it. The diagnosis they gave me was idiosyncratic hypogonadism, which is just a
Yeah.
science way of saying you have low testosterone when we have
Yeah.
so so then that's what they told me, but luckily I didn't really take that advice. I just kept hunting and looking for other habits that I could apply to my life and things that I could do to improve my health in any way, shape, or form, and trying different things and things that helped even minutely I'd keep in my daily routines, and things that didn't work I stopped doing. And yeah, eventually um it took 6 years, but I got it back. So like close to the end of that period, I remember talking to my specialist and saying like, could this be burnout? Like I've been reading out on the internet and they talk about things like people burning out and their hormones giving up and stuff like that. And he's like, no, that's not a thing. So I was like, but that's definitely what it was. Like that's how I treated myself. That's how um I I followed my day to day as if I had burnt out. And like when your body is in such a low place and it's like just given up, you almost have to take it to the extreme in order to let your body relax and get to the point where it's like, okay, I can come back to health now. Like it's and that's what I felt happened with me. Like I had such a strict and it's not that I'm necessarily superhuman in the way that I can apply these habits. Just I had a really strong reason. Like when your libido is not 100% and you're taking hormone replacement therapy, like it's pretty easy to stay motivated and apply all these habits. So
Mhm.
that's what I did. Like and we can dig into these different habits, but there was a lot of different things I've tried.
Interesting. But I mean, going back to the one thing you did mention that, you felt that it was like the libido was completely off. What was like another big marker in that? Because you mentioned feeling lethargic and stuff. What's
Yeah,
another thing that would like low test that you noticed that kind of stuck out like a massive red flag? Because I can imagine low libido is one of those where I'm like, yeah.
that's right. That was the biggest red flag for me. But then and then energy levels in general and just my body hurt. It was just sore all the time. Like I remember the sheer amount of motivation that it took for me just to make it through my average day was intense. Like, and it was because I have a physical job, right? So I'm walking, working, lifting stuff all day long. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it got to the point. It took so much motivation just to make it through a day. And so that's just like a heavy level of stress. And like, I couldn't even walk without pain. And I couldn't run at all anymore without like, just couldn't run. It was just too
Huh.
painful. Like, yeah, those were big red flags. And there's a lot of little things that like my immune system, I got like warts in my hands that wouldn't go away. Then go to the doctor, you treat them with liquid nitrogen, and instead of going away, I get like 10 more
Oh my
spread around my
gosh.
hand. Like my immune system is why isn't working properly. And it's just like other things too, like I was I was developing some sort of anxiety around getting cold. And I work outside in the cold all the time. So it was a real problem.
Huh.
And it's like I didn't want to get out of the shower because it was too cold outside the shower. That's why I had like super long hot water shower. And like little things like it didn't make a lot of sense, but my body was struggling. So I had a hard time
Yeah.
maintaining my body temperature. And it's just like I got to the point where I was like going outside to just do my regular chores. It's just like there was really anxiety around it. Like it got way out of hand. And it's like one of the things that I started doing is like I kind of like looked towards my fears and things that I struggle with the most. And I started doing cold exposure
Interesting.
and doing cold showers and did a couple of cold baths and stuff like that and went in the river a couple of times in the winter and it's like
Whew.
yeah, so it's like just like hit it dead on. And it was like so like going from like being too scared to leave the shower because the air is too cold to like turn the cold water on. It was intense that first time doing it. Like
Yeah.
adrenaline rush was insane. Never experienced anything like it since. But like over time your body adapts and like your your mitochondria like the ones that can't produce heat well enough, your body breaks those down and replenishes them, builds new mitochondria. So you kind of have like younger, newer, healthier cells throughout your entire body so you can produce heat when you're doing these regular cold exposures. So it's like, and those mitochondria are also like the powerhouses of your cells. Like those
Yeah.
are energy levels too. And like things like that, they all helped a little bit. But like it brought me from like zero to maybe like or like 10% to like maybe like 30, 40% of
Uh-huh.
vitality. You know what I mean? And like, so the cold exposure helped a lot, not only for just my ability to handle the cold again, but also like when you're getting exposed to that cold temperature, what you got to do is you got to try force your body to relax. So I
Yeah.
started becoming super aware of what stressed felt like and what relaxed felt like, especially how you breathe. The breathing is dramatically different. And I started becoming aware of my diaphragm and like stress breathing is like you're really up high in your chest and like
Yeah.
really shallow breaths. Whereas like relaxed breathing is deep in your diaphragm and you're like your belly is expanding and it's like and they're deep breaths. So I started noticing throughout the day just working, I was stress breathing for most of the day for no reason. I
Yeah.
didn't there was no reason to be stressed. It's just a habit of the way I was breathing. So things like that too, like those helped a little bit too. And like but again, just like they're all incremental improvements, nothing huge and dramatic. And around that time too, I started going to some naturopaths too, hoping for some different or new ideas or different routes that I can go down to try to improve my health. And they're saying, oh, you probably have a B12 deficiency that's caused by some food sensitivities. So I took some B12 and that helped incrementally as well for a while. And I started cutting out the foods that were causing me like digestive issues and stuff like that, and the bloating decreased and stuff like that, and all small changes. And I kept stacking them every single time I know something. I stack that and stack it and stack it. And one of the last things that I tried was a prolonged fast. And it never
Interesting.
occurred to me growing up to fast because like I'm 6 feet tall. I had a lot of growth spurts, always hungry, lots of and I'm always active as a kid too, right? So it was like to go hours without food was mind blowing, let alone days.
Yeah.
So like it never crossed my mind to give it a go, but like all the health gurus went on and on about how amazing it is. So I did. And it must have been some sort of a biological reset because as soon as I ended that fast, the it brought me from like a 30 back to like 100%. Like the amount of energy and
Interesting.
vitality that I had was huge. And like I think, and it wasn't that the fast, I bet you if I did a fast on like day one of being sick, it would have done nothing.
Yeah.
But I had 6 years of being incredibly strict and following all these healthy habits and like and stacking these habits, years and years of doing these things. And like my diet too, I was very strict, cutting out all sorts of junk food, all whole foods. And I went from like I tried different extremes, like just the plants. Because
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
when I got sick, there was all sorts of information on the internet of like how the vegan diet was going to solve all the world's and 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 fix everything. And then so I tried that for a while, but then which was an improvement over eating junk food. But
Hmm.
I found like sticking to the whole foods, which is a great start with the vegan diet, eating whole foods. But then as I increased more animal foods too, it helped a lot. I was definitely in that time, I was definitely craving saturated fat. And I didn't realize this to after the fact, but when I was eating that way, I could never get enough chocolate. And I ate like 95% dark chocolate. It's supposed to be
Yeah.
healthy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter like how much food I could eat. Like I could get massive stir fry with beans and lentils and seeds and whatever else. I still couldn't leave the house without having like a bite of that chocolate. And I had to leave the house or else I had to keep eating that chocolate and get back to work. It's just never enough insatiable cravings for chocolate. And I realized
Yeah.
after the fact that chocolate is one of maybe two plant sources of saturated fat.
Interesting.
I think I was craving some saturated fat just for my hormones, especially. Like you need saturated fat and cholesterol as like the building blocks for your hormones, let alone your cell walls and your brain. Your brain is 20% cholesterol, 60% fat. Like every cell wall, every cell membrane in your body, and every membrane of every organelle inside every cell of your body needs saturated fat and cholesterol. So it's like I was craving it hard. And now that I eat a lot of meat, I don't touch the stuff. I don't crave it. I don't need it.
Yeah.
Don't want it. It can be sitting in the closet and no reason to eat it.
Yeah.
So like my body is you just gotta learn to listen to your body, I suppose. But
Well, a
yeah,
combination of different things. But what's really interesting there, and I want to ask you about the fast. Did you just jump in with like a 24-hour fast? Did you do intermittent fasting before, or you just said, "Hey, screw it, I'm gonna do like a 72-hour fast"? Like, what did that progression kind of look like for you?
yeah, one of the things that I did was intermittent fasting. I did that for years before I
Hmm.
tried a longer fast. Intermittent fasting, it's convenient. I can just get up and get to work. And then when I come in the house later in the morning, that's when I have my first meal, break my fast. And then
Hmm.
uh, I'd have supper with my kids, which is usually pretty early because kids have an earlier bedtime. And then I wouldn't eat after that. So it was intermittent fasting is something that I did already for years. So
Yeah.
like I think I was used to switching in and out of ketosis that way. So like when I did like the longer fast, it was surprisingly easy. And I didn't like read into it too much as far as like what you should do during your fast, how you should break your fast. I just kind of jumped in and did it. And I just kind of did what was convenient for my workout routine because my
Hmm.
workouts were really important because I build my workouts around longevity and like and healing my joints and like improving my movement patterns so
Hmm.
that I can move better. Surprisingly, because even walking is something I have to teach myself to do properly because like naturally your body disproportionately loads your joints. So
Yeah.
I have to relearn how to move just so that I can load my muscles instead of my joints and just move in a pain-free way. But anyway, what I was trying to get at is like that's a high priority for me. So like I just did my fast. Like I work out 6 days a week. So I kind of start my fast on like the night before my last workout of the week. So
Mhm.
that I do one workout fast. I always do my workouts faster in the morning anyway.
Yeah.
So I started on like say a Friday night, Saturday morning, I do my last workout, and then Sunday I keep fasting until like Sunday night for supper. So it ended up being like, I don't know, 30 hours or something like that,
Yeah.
like 35 hours, something. I wasn't too picky about it. And then yeah, and then didn't later on when I like now I do like I try to do one or two fasts every year just because how amazing it was for me and how much of a difference it made. It made me realize like it's good every once in a while just to have that biological reset. So I try
Yeah.
to do it once or twice a year, still like a longer fast. But now I've learned that if you have salt water while you're fasting, it really helps maintain your energy levels higher. So I
Mhm.
can keep doing physical work throughout the whole day without really slipping much at all. It's kind of surprising how well I can maintain that physical effort, even if I'm spending a whole day picking stones in the field or something like that in the spring. Like I can do it fasted.
Yeah. Well, you know what the thing is to me, and that's where a lot of misconceptions are kind of made around fasting, where people, for some reason, think that you're going to die immediately if you go without food. But I've always
Yeah,
kind of made that one, like, I mean, and I made this observation even when I was younger, the first time I wanted to lose weight, I'm like, well, if food is what's keeping me fat, what if I just cut out all food? And this is before fasting was ever a thing. And this is before I read probably one of the best books on fasting, which was called or no, it's by, I forgot the guy's name, but it's called Eat, Stop, Eat. Old school book where he just talks about breaking down fasting and how every single civilization at some point had some type of fasting protocol that they would use. And it was crazy because it was like a universal thing, regardless of what it was or who the culture was. There was always some type of weird, not weird, but like they all had a fasting practice involved somehow, some way. So I said to myself when I was younger, I'm like, well, you know what? I'm pretty fat right now. What if I just try fasting? And I went pretty intense with it, with like 2 day fast, 1 day fast. And obviously the stigma around it back in the day was like, oh, you know what, you're bulimic or you got an eating disorder. But I'm like, I can eat right now, but I feel fine. And the thing was, to a lot of people's kind of amazement, was like, hey, you're losing weight, your skin looks better. How do you feel? I'm like, I feel fantastic. And I've lost like 20 pounds in the process. And to your point, it almost does feel like a reset because when you come back from that fast, it's almost like your body readjusts certain things. And I guess from a hormonal perspective, it does make that change, I guess, that reset to like, okay, this is his new homeostasis. It's almost like that for me, the 72-hour fast kind of allows my body to kind of go, okay, let's regulate this, let's get rid of that, let's bring the weight down. And it's like, all right, cool. And now that he's eating again, it's kind of like you have a new OS almost programmed into your hardware, right? So that's kind of why I think, from my perspective, and talking to you, it's one of these things that I think is universal to humans. I think we need time off from eating every now and again.
well, yeah, there's a whole other half of our metabolic system that we typically don't touch.
Yeah.
Like, well, like though, like digesting fats and surviving off ketones, every single cell in your body has the ability to switch over to ketones, and it never gets that chance. It's like
Hmm.
there's something wrong with that. There's a whole hormonal system that we don't touch on a regular basis. That can't be healthy.
Yeah. No,
It's for a reason.
it has to, because the thing is, and again, going back to just kicking it old school and looking at humans the way that we were, if before we had the ability to farm, if we were just hunters, that kind of meant you're going to go without food for a while, bucko. So your body had to be like, okay, so to make sure we don't die, we're going to go into ketosis for a while. And it's like, all right, cool. Also, you're going to have a little bit more energy. All right, cool. Also, you got to go hunt that guy. So adrenaline, these other hormones are still going to, be working at their full capacity while you don't have food in your system. Because I am of the belief that I, I I'm glad that we have food readily available, right? But the problem is that it's become a double-edged sword where people just think that snacking is of the norm. And having these highly palatable, calorically rich foods, unfortunately, has made us obese. It's like amongst many other things. And I don't think that we should be spiking our insulin constantly with these sugary foods. And in doing so, I think we're seeing something at a universal, like at a global level, where we're seeing obesity spike, we're seeing all these different things happening, these endocrine disruptors. Like it's just a combination of so many different things where I guess even for yourself, you start off with the process of elimination. Like I'll take out the junk food and see what happens. Unfortunately, a lot of people got to get sick before they get better, right? And obviously, for yourself, you're able to come out from the other side and be like, all right, well, I'm going to try this out. Had the balls to go through it. And now you're like, okay, maybe we should try fasting more often. Maybe we should do a little bit of intermittent fasting, something. But unfortunately, I do feel that we're being forced almost to believe that snacking and overeating is just part of like, it's commonplace, unfortunately. And too many people just take part in it.
That's right. Yeah, if you think back to like what kind of food we used to have readily available, like if you were fortunate enough to kill some sort of animal, you'd have a plenty amount of food that you could eat whenever you want, basically for a couple of days.
Yeah.
Depending on how cold it is outside, that meat's going is going to be a sketch in a hurry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then like, oh, you might be able to find some root vegetables here and there, but even back then, like it's not like a potato or a carrot that we see nowadays. Like it was small, it was fibrous, it was full of anti-nutrients. It was
Hmm.
not very palatable. And then and fruit was crazy seasonal. Like you'd have a tree that all of a sudden you have more pears that you could ever eat. Well, pears maybe probably wasn't even a thing then, but like crab apple, which is, I don't know if many people have tried crab apples, but we've got some crab apple trees around the farm and I don't eat it. It's not good.
Really?
Doesn't taste good. And like so like, those that's what fruit was back then. So it's like, yeah, you didn't have real foods that really truly spiked your insulin
Hmm.
the way we have foods available now. Like those are freak foods. Those weren't around when our biology evolved, or depending on what you believe, like when we were
Hmm.
something like that, like those foods weren't there. So like it was meat, a lot of meat. That was basically the most caloric dense food that you could get. And that's probably what people went through or had a lot of effort to try to get that on a consistent basis. But other than that, it was fibrous and like low carb kind of substance foods that kind of get you through to your next kill.
Pretty
So,
much, yeah.
yeah, the insulin spikes and the glucose spikes, like it wasn't a thing. There's no table sugar. There's no way they were finding it back then. And even like more recently, like if I look around the farm, like I gotta learn a lot of skills just to grow vegetables. And even
Yeah.
those vegetables are are seasonal and the fruits are seasonal, even though they're way more caloric dense. There's way more sugars in those fruits than ever has been before, but they're still seasonal. We have some apple trees that are delicious, and I eat the shit out of those apples when they're ripe. But they're only ripe for the different depends on which apple variety is ripe at that time, but like only for a week before those apples start falling on the ground and going bad and stuff like that. And like so it's
Jeez,
like the
yeah.
only real consistent delicious food if I just walk around the farm without buying stuff from the grocery store is meat.
Yeah.
That's consistently there. So it's like and like if you look at the vegetables that we grow nowadays, almost well, hell, I could probably say every single vegetable that you would eat didn't exist a few thousand years ago. We created those things.
Jeez. That's kind of a scary thought because it's like, well, you know what? We're gonna process our agricultural side of things as well. Thanks out, shouts out to Monsanto and these other corporations and that's right. I understand, industrial farming and what they got to do and feed everybody and all that. But at the same time, it's always the question I always ask myself is like, at what cost? And I don't really want to participate in that. And I think a lot of the guys that listen to the show don't really want to be consuming things that they know deep down aren't really good for them, right? Because at the end of the day, we all want to be healthier. And that kind of goes back to so, like, after you came out of the fast, you felt good. What were some other protocols that you found that helped you in getting your test levels back up? Because you had mentioned like the supplementation a little bit and the cold exposure, but more than anything, it was the fast, right?
Yeah, the fast, like, yeah, it's hard to say all the other habits. It's hard to say how big of an impact they made because they were all incremental improvements. Like, yeah, the
Yeah.
culture was a big thing because I was starting to develop anxiety around it. The breathing was important to me because I was never self-aware enough to realize I was stress breathing all day, which like tied back to the cold exposure. The diet was a big thing too, because I was eating foods every day, every meal that were that were causing some sort of immune response. And so that was a big thing too. The exercise is a big deal for me too. And like I say, I put a high priority on the way I exercise. I've never really been somebody that was very self-conscious, even in high school. Unfortunately, I never exercised because I didn't really care how I looked. I was unique that way, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
uh, I ran a little bit when I played rugby because I wanted to improve my cardio, but like I never really cared to try and improve the way I looked. Like, and it's a downside of having low like being having like low self-conscious levels or something like that. But there's like it's like double-edged sword, like just like anything else. Like I kind of wish I was a little more self-conscious in high school. And I would have enough motivation to start these positive habits earlier in my life. But anyway, I started exercising when I was 25, but like yeah, really I was really heavily influenced with a guy named Ido Portal
Oh yeah, movement expert. Yeah, yeah, he's cool.
guy, and then the knees over toes guy. Those
Oh
two
yeah, awesome. Yeah.
those two people have had a really strong influence on the way I exercise.
Interesting. Yeah, because you mentioned that you were doing it more for longevity, more for health and that kind of side of things. What is some of those exercises kind of look like? Because I know Ido Portal is like, he's got the. I remember the first time I saw that guy was when he was training with Conor McGregor back in the day. I'm like, what is this guy doing? He's like a gorilla walk and whatever. I'm like, I might try that. And then I'm like, yo, this is really hard.
That's right. Yeah, the first time I came across him, he was doing some sort of like lizard crawl on the floor and like doing some capoeira, like
Yeah.
kicking his feet up in the air, and it's like, wow, that looks fun. I wish I could do that. So it's like that's yeah. So like basically, my exercise is not nearly as cool as his. Um, I only do like I do like a kind of it's more of a minimal workout. I do 30 minutes full body workout 6 days a week,
Yeah.
and I do full bodies every day. I used to do like push pull split, like push pull leg splits,
Yeah.
but I'm like I couldn't get the volume in that they say is ideal per body part. So I
Hmm.
found like the half-hour workouts, sticking to that. If I do a full body workout every day of the week, I can build up a lot more volume, and I start making more progress with that
Yeah.
extra volume. So like for me, full body 6 days a week worked quite well. So it's yeah, and like I just have like three major goals as far as push pull and legs. Like I have like I want to be able to do handstand push-ups, one arm pull-ups, and pistol squats for like high reps. And then like I kind of like look back from there, like what are some progressions to get there. And then I have maybe some secondary ones. So like I do like there's like you can push in different directions. So I have like I do like upper like push-ups, like elevated push-ups, so I get my upper
Hmm.
chest. So that's why my wife really likes the way that looks. So I'll try to look good for my wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then I gotta do some deadlifts and stuff like that because well, deadlifts is just important because I pick up stuff around the farm all day. So be
Yeah.
strong in that way, and then do some rows just to balance things out. But yeah, and I start my workout with like a bit of a movement routine. Kind of I call it a mobility routine.
Hmm.
My wife kind of likes to tease me a little bit, saying, "Oh, you're just doing yoga," but it's like basically the movements that I suck at most. I just go through them and try to transition from one to the other. So that's like the most similar to what like Ido Portal does. Like I kind of like do some back bends and I kick up into a handstand and like and squats and stuff like that. I just try to work
Yeah.
through the movements that I suck at most, kind of just transition between them, get my heart rate up, and then I start my workout.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean the combination of different things, and I think honestly that's crucial because I mean, for me, I mean, I train people in fitness, and this is what I do, and this is what I love to do. But I always tell people like the number one thing that you got to do in regards to your training is do something you actually like doing. If you like, if I give somebody a program, he's like, bro, I absolutely hate this shit. Then I'm like, cool, you're not gonna follow it. Let's scrap it. Because
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
absolutely no point of getting anybody to follow a program they don't want to do. Because if they tell you they don't want to do it, they're not interested. It's kind of like, hey, can we mix it up with some more athletic endeavors or whatever the case may be? Then cool. Then you just nailed it on the head because that's exactly what you want the person that's doing it. You want them to enjoy the actual workout itself. And it's kind of like you said, you saw Ido Portal, like that looks kind of cool. I want to try that, and that motivates you more than being like, okay, I don't really want to train like Ronnie Coleman, but he's jacked. So I'm gonna, follow a workout program that I despise, but I'll get jacked. And it's kind of like, well, you know what? You're not gonna last too long in that journey because halfway through you're gonna be like, this sucks. I give up, right? So I think it's
Yep.
super important that you do that. And the other thing too, it's like the mobility is probably one of the most I think it's one of the most important things that most people can do to just make sure, from a longevity standpoint, when it comes to mobility, a lot of people just stiffen up and they can't really move around very well through time and space. And that's where you get, like the hips that are all locked up, you get shoulder issues,
Start reaching
impingements,
forward and walking
impairments.
like an old man.
Oh yeah, dude, like you'd be surprised, man. But simply doing like something like a farmer walk, well, I guess you don't have to because that's your job. But
I never work out my traps, but I don't need to because
yeah, I don't think so.
farmer walks is something that I do all the time. Yeah.
Exactly, man. And I mean, the beauty of it too, it's like you're combining it with an active lifestyle and, the fact that you're actually doing this as well. So, no, kudos to you. And that makes perfect sense from my perspective. But the other thing I was going to ask you about too, now that we're on the subject, is so your diet prior to, the low test levels, I guess you were eating a little bit of junk food, right? Probably eating probably more calories than you should have, not regulating things, not having the whole foods. Now that you came out of it from the other side, and from where you're currently at, what does your diet actually look like today?
Yeah, it was quite a journey of trying different things before I found something that really works. And it's like diet's tricky because you can feel better, but not as good as you could. And like you might
Yeah.
never find out how good you can feel until you try the next thing. Right. So I think it's important to experiment with yourself and really try for yourself what works. Because people could try eating a vegan diet and then because they're eating nothing but whole foods, they feel better and they're convinced that's as good as they can feel, not realizing that there is a whole other way of eating that they potentially, maybe not, depending on the person, could feel even better. Like there's all sorts of different kind of diets that are out there. Like the paleo diet and stuff like that too is also great. But like I think it's worth trying out different things. And like for me, where I ended up is I really focus on nutrient dense foods, which is something that I've always kind of focused on. That's like the
Hmm.
whole food movement. It's all about eating nutrient dense food. But now I combine that with I focus more on the whole foods that are easy to digest. And I
Okay.
find like less bloated and like my stomach like it's just like the digestion is so much easier and it leads to so much more vitality. I feel like the way we measure nutrient density is a little flawed because just because the food is in there and you can test it under some sort of a microscope or or whatever other testing you might do, just because it's there doesn't mean you're going to get it. Like
Hmm.
you have to be able to digest it. You have to be able to absorb it. And that's something I think that's very much overlooked. So now what I eat is very much um I eat a lot of meat,
Hmm.
a lot of red meat. I drink and eat a lot of raw dairy.
Yeah.
And I'm unique that way because I'm one of the very few people in Canada that can actually legally consume raw dairy.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say.
It's illegal to sell it. It's illegal to transport it, and I don't do either of those. I just grab it out of the tank and drink it.
Yeah. You're
So like,
blessed in that sense. Yeah.
absolutely, it's an absolute shame that more people can't experience how amazing it is because, ironically, dairy is one of the foods that I was reacting to. That's one of the ones that was causing the biggest immune response in my body. I was reacting to the lactose and to the proteins, the casein.
Hmm.
Like I couldn't even have like a tiny little chocolate bar without having a huge immune response and being bloated and digestive issues and stuff like that and like brain fog and whatever else. So like it's hilarious and that I can now consume liters and liters of this stuff every day, no issues at all. It does a completely different thing to my body. So like lots of raw dairy, lots of meat, and then beyond that, it's fruit. I eat a lot of fruit and a lot of honey. And for a period, I took it all the way to the extreme where I ate nothing but meat for a
Yeah.
short period of time. But I'm naturally quite lean. I struggle putting on weight, and I found that I can eat more meat if I eat it with a little bit of carbs.
Yeah.
So I feel like I was worried that I was going to start losing weight because I just couldn't eat enough. I was eating less meat when I was eating only meat. So I was like, I took a step back, little less extreme. And this is where I feel my best, when I just
Yeah.
eat a lot of dairy, a lot of meat, and some fruit and stuff like that. A lot of berries and oranges. I like oranges, and feel great. Feel a lot of vitality, a lot of strength, and and for me, one of the issues that I had earlier on with my when I had lots of digestive issues, that is I couldn't digest fatty foods. So
Interesting.
for me, it was I used fruit to gradually progress towards eating more and more meat. And so I've had like every ratio of like plants to meat on my
Yeah.
way towards eating almost, well, for a little while nothing but meat, and then back down to just a little bit of carbs along with it. So like I've tried it all. For me, this is like, I'm surprised myself where I ended up, because I was not expecting it to work. But like I'm open-minded, so I give it a go. Like there's a lot of the logic behind it made a lot of sense to me. And as far as
Mhm.
also like where we what we would have eaten naturally, and I love like the science behind evolution. So like where we would have eaten earlier on, like we were primarily eating, like hunting for meat for 3 million years. Like it's such a long time that we're
Yeah.
eating a lot of meat, and that would have been like the most nutrient dense, caloric dense food that we could get our hands on. So like our ancestors would have tried everything to get as much of that as possible. So it's like it makes a lot of sense to me personally. And then also like I dug into the science too behind it. Like a lot of like the nitrogen isotopes. I'm not sure if you looked into that.
No, yeah. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I love this stuff. So like if you look at our ancestors pre-agriculture, and you look at nitrogen isotopes, which comes originally from like the plants and stuff, and
Yeah.
when you compare different animals, you can see different levels of nitrogen isotopes, and you can use that to predict where they stood in the food chain. So herbivores that ate nothing but plants, they have a certain level of these nitrogen isotopes that they got from the plants that they ate. Whereas a carnivore would have a higher level of these nitrogen isotopes, because it accumulated in the herbivores, and then this carnivore ate a whole bunch of herbivores. So they have all of their nitrogen isotopes, which brings their levels higher. And you can measure this from the bones of these animals. So these
What?
isotopes stay in the bones, and you can find it way, way back. And then so you look at different animals and you can kind of figure out where they were and how much meat they actually ate. Like, because like an omnivore would have eaten, like different omnivores eat different amounts of meats and plants. And so like something like a horse, like a wild horse would have quite low. And then like an Arctic fox, which like out in the Arctic, it wouldn't eat that many berries and stuff like that. It was almost eating nothing but meat. So it had much higher nitrogen isotopes. And then they looked at like 5 different groups of humans, Homo sapiens, around that same time. And where do you think their nitrogen isotope levels were? Guess.
I'd say they were low.
They were even higher than the Arctic fox.
What?
They were higher than a true carnivore. So they defined humans, Homo sapiens at that time, as hyper carnivores.
Oh, I
Because
mean at that time, I was thinking like modern humans, my
sorry,
bad.
yeah, maybe I didn't word that properly, but yeah, this is pre-agriculture. So they were eating the herbivores and they were eating the carnivores.
Gotcha.
So their nitrogen isotopes levels across all 5 different groups, different areas, had higher nitrogen isotope levels than the true carnivores. So they're classified as hypercarnivores. So like
Jeez.
that's based off of nitrogen isotopes. That's pretty good science of where they stood in the food chain. Like they were true hunters. And
Interesting.
yeah, and then like also stuff like you see like the wave of extinctions of these mega herbivores throughout the world as Homo sapiens expanded across the world. Like you see like the giant sloths go extinct. You see
Yeah.
the woolly mammoths go extinct. And it's like humans were chasing these huge fatty herbivores, just going across the whole world looking for these big ass herbivores that naturally are safe because they're so big, that the
Yeah.
carnivores safe from carnivores just because they're sheer size. But humans were able to find ways to hunt them in with their like large groups, and then
Hmm.
like running them off cliffs and stuff like that and trapping them, that they were able to kill these huge herbivores, these huge fatty herbivores.
That's
Like
interesting.
the wave of extinctions that follows as Homo sapiens spread across the globe. And it's like we were definitely prioritizing these big ass fatty animals. And then like once they went extinct, well then there would just be like smaller herbivores left, which
Hmm.
made hunting less fruitful. You have these animals are usually quicker. Once you get a kill, you don't get as much meat. You can't eat for it as long. And then came the agriculture revolution, which who knows what sparked the agriculture revolution, whether it be the fact that we weren't able to get these mega herbivores anymore. They were basically
Yeah.
all extinct, or if it was, I even heard hypotheses that it's that agriculture started because of our desire for alcohol. Hilarious because like we were like it's like if you're fermenting wheat and stuff like grasses or whatever else that was around at that time, for fermenting that, you kind of got to stick close to your fermenting pot to get that alcohol.
Yeah.
Well, all different kind of theories of what sparked it, but either way, if you look in the fossil record, before and after the agricultural revolution, there's a sharp line where all of a sudden there's a massive decrease in our stature. We're significantly shorter. Our brain size, our skulls are smaller. And like we have more evidence of poor healing. There's injuries in our bones and stuff like that that you can see that just it's not healing properly. There's all sorts of
Interesting.
malfunctions, like oh not mal like they didn't grow
Malformations and stuff.
properly. Oh, yeah, malformations. Thank you. Like and like especially in the teeth and jaw, you can see it really well. Like and pre-agriculture, we never used to have issues with our wisdom teeth growing in.
Yeah.
Sudden after the agricultural revolution and the lower level of nutrition that we got that time, all of a sudden they had all sorts of dental issues and wisdom teeth wouldn't grow in properly. And it's like and it's a sharp line right at that time. So it's like, and then like now slowly on, it's starting to improve again as our diet's starting to increase and the nutrient density is starting to improve. But yeah, the agricultural revolution was not an improvement as far as our diet quality.
That's super interesting. And you know what? It's crazy that you say the thing about the jaw because I was looking into that too. Where I was listening to a vegan making the argument that our jaws were made for plants and stuff, and I'm like, somehow I doubt that. Like I don't really think so, bro. He's like, we were just meant to eat celery and all this kind of whatever. And
Yeah,
I think as a society, like it means well, but at the same time, like because I remember even in your profile, I mentioned that you had gone vegan for a bit, right? But if it had been as miraculous as they make it out to be, I think you would have stuck with it. But and even for myself, I tried veganism for like a week and I felt sick. And a couple of the other guys that I know that tried it out, one guy ended up with IBS. He had digestive issues for like, I think he still has them, so I shouldn't laugh. But he basically he ran a number on his digestive system through veganism.
I tried it for years and I tried it to the extreme, like, or I tried doing it right, where you have the beans and the lentils for the protein, lots of seeds and nuts for fats and avocados, like all whole foods. Like I did it right, and I prioritized like the nutrient dense vegetables, like lots of
Yeah.
potatoes, grains, whole grains, oats. I had massive bowls of oats every morning. Like I was doing it right, and I was determined to try and make it work. And like I even had like the B12 vitamins at that time too
Yeah. Yeah.
because
You had a
like
supplement.
deficient B12. So like I had some supplementations, but like in that time, I every single time I went back to the naturopath, I added a couple food sensitivities. Like I just kept growing
Oh my
more and more
gosh.
food sensitivities. I was like, what's going on? Like I'm doing this ideal diet and doing it to the extreme. I'm doing it right. But like over time, my body is like, no, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna start reacting to that and to that and whatever else. And it's like this adding on sensitivities after another, like eventually I can't eat anything anymore. Like I can't even eat dry
Yeah.
anymore because I was reacting to the sulfates. And I was like, oh my goodness, something's not right.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is too with veganism, and that's kind of where, I mean, there's people that I talk to and they're all about it. I'm like, that's fine and all that. However, I do find that when it comes to veganism, I find that like a lot of the stuff they eat is ultra processed. Like some of the stuff we eat is processed already. And then they're telling me about like the impossible burgers, this, that, and the other. And I was watching a guy break it down, like as far as the chemicals that were involved, the additive. Like, I'm like, dude, I'd rather just eat beef, Like, I'm not looking to eat a science experiment that you came up with in a lab that you added beet juice for blood. I'm like, no, man, this doesn't make any sense. Which kind of
Science.
like, and I know this is just kind of speculation, but on like on the subject of veganism and now carnivore that's kind of becoming more popular, what do you think is going to happen to the population though that decides to go full veganism or full vegan for the next 5 to 10 years? What would be your just kind of like theoretical approach to like, oh, I can see this happening to them in the future?
Yeah, that's like I think one extreme gives birth to the next. So
Yeah,
so like I feel like there's so many people that like and the stats are already in like this of the number of people that don't stick to the vegan diet, that try it and don't stick to it for
yeah,
one reason or another. And if you interview these people, typically what they say as a reason for quitting this diet, the vegan diet, is health concerns.
yeah.
So it's like, and I feel like people that develop all sorts of like IBS or Crohn's or less extreme versions of like what I had, where I just had sensitivities one after another, people are then pushed towards going to the other extreme, to the nothing but meat, because it's really like just red meat is a great elimination diet where like
Mhm.
there's nothing that you're reacting to, but you're still getting all the nutrition that you need. So it's like it's a great experiment to see how good you can feel. And I feel like there's going to be so many people that try the diet and are pushed towards it and don't do it right, or they develop all sorts of health issues and food sensitivity, autoimmune issues, and so they're going to be forced to eat nothing but meat because of the fact that they eat nothing but plants. So it's like,
Interesting.
and I'm not 100% sure of like, and I don't want to give like advice of everybody should eat exactly this way because everybody's,
Hmm.
but typically it's not in the extremes.
Hmm.
So like
Yeah.
I'm pretty safe to say it's somewhere in between where you're eating like a significant amount of meat because that's what we evolved eating. That's what we've been eating for 3 million years. That's what we were eating before we were even Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
Like that's what we were eating. We were prioritizing meat. So like meat is a central part of it. But like I feel pretty confident saying that. But as far as like the ratios and like how much of these plants that we should be eating, it's hard to say, and I think everybody's different. But
Hmm.
I feel like there's going to be the carnivore diet is going to explode in popularity, and it's going to follow the wave of people trying the vegan diet.
I think so. Because you're right. I never thought about it or viewed it from that perspective. It's almost like, hey, one extreme diet leads to another. And it's almost like we're just looking for that balance. And that's kind of where I'm at as well for myself, in that I always like, I got a friend that's Muslim. He's like, oh, I won't touch pig, and all that. And I'm like, it's haram. And I'm like, it's cool, man. I do. And then we'll just joke around about whatever. And the thing is, and the way I kind of look at it, it's like geographically, the people in my area were eating wild boar all the time because it was the food that was available, eating a lot of
Yeah,
fish, cows. So if I kick it old school and just look at my genealogy, it's kind of like, huh, interesting. These people were eating these products way back when. They were also drinking raw milk, eating honey, and even some turtle because that's what was available, right? And
right.
it's not that, like I get it. We live in a society where a lot of the things that they've been manufactured in a way so that there's like as little friction as possible in the way that we consume things, right? So everything's very nice, very orderly, blah blah blah. But then when I went back to my country, I remember my grandma, she would just snap the chicken's head, just be like, all right, he's dead, good, time to eat. Like, oh damn, like I've never seen that before coming from Canada. And then
Yeah,
but it really opened my eyes too to like how different the culture was, how different the food was, how different it tasted. And when I did go back, or even now, just thinking about my time there, it was people ate what's available. And the thing is, like, it's a very luscious place where we got fruit all year, and we have the ability to eat all that kind of stuff, and your body craves it. And my body craves, like the meat. It'd be me going against myself and saying like, oh, I'm gonna eat this because somebody out there said that this is the way that we should be eating, when it's like deep down you shouldn't be eating that way. And I think, to your point, we are all unique, but it's always about balance. I find, it's like it's not rocket science at the end of the day, but it almost feels like it just comes down to eating a good, well balanced diet and one that's appropriate to you. However, you are one lucky dude that you're able to drink that raw milk, man. Because like the more I looked into that, I'm just like, bro, trying to find a farmer out here, be like, hey, bro, you want to hook me up with like a liter? It's like, no, technically I can't, man.
no,
And I've
the
seen,
risk is real. Like the dairy farms of Canada, the government is
yeah.
willing to spend a surprising amount of money keeping this under control. So like it's
Yeah.
crazy. Like I've had some farmers local to me that got busted for selling raw milk, and the consequences are pretty high, massive fines and stuff like that. And
Dude.
for me personally, like, I have a like we milk cows. Like, we're still doing the dairy side of our farm on a commercial basis, and
Hmm.
the beef and the turkeys that we're doing with the regenerative agriculture. But like I'm not willing to risk my income, my like the way I provide for my family,
Yeah.
just I can sell raw milk under the table, and it doesn't matter what the price is. I've heard some insane prices of what people are willing to pay for a gallon of milk,
Yeah.
like dollars or more, hundreds of dollars for a gallon of milk, and it's like, people want it so bad, and
Dude.
like, and I've been researching it because it makes me feel amazing, like it's a pretty unique food. Like for me, it was one of the foods that was causing me the biggest issues, the pasteurized milk.
Hmm.
And now it's one of the foods that make me feel the absolute best. And like you can't say it's the same food. Like dairy farmers of Canada try to talk about how there really isn't that much of a difference. It's just safer and all the nutrients are still there. And like, yeah, the nutrients are there, but you can't digest it the same way. And it's like there are like raw milk is a beautiful food because it's the most alive food that you can
Yeah.
ever get your hands on. It's really, and it's like, so like you consume it and then it literally digests itself inside of your gut,
Jeez.
all
Yeah.
while colonizing your gut with healthy bacteria. So like there's 60 different enzymes in raw milk. Every single
Wow.
one of them is denatured to the point where it does no longer performs its function in the milk. Now that you're like, and the protein is still there. Like you still have protein. Like pasteurized milk is still a great source of proteins and fats and minerals.
Hmm.
But like one of the ways that you test that your milk is pasteurized properly is when the enzyme alkaline phosphatase is no longer functioning. And that enzyme allows you to absorb and utilize the calcium in that milk. So like
Hmm.
you're that's how they test that milk is properly pasteurized when the enzyme that helps you absorb the calcium, which is supposed to be one of the amazing things about milk, is no longer functional. So like there's enzymes for every single mineral in that milk to help you absorb it and digest it and use it. There's and it's like there's yeah, like every single mineral that your body needs, every essential mineral and 24 trace minerals is found in milk. Every essential vitamin is in milk. And it's like these enzymes, and it's like it's not just they're not just like yeah, go back to enzymes first before I get carried away with everything else. Like we have there's for digesting fats. There's enzymes for digesting proteins. There's enzymes for digesting lactose. I couldn't digest lactose, but the milk does it for me.
Interesting.
There's also bacteria in the milk that digest lactose. There's even signaling molecules that stimulate your body to produce lactase. Sorry, I've been saying lactose this whole time. Lactase. Lactase is the enzyme
Gotcha.
that digests lactose. But so like there's an enzyme for everything, and like and these proteins, some of the proteins, they're not just nutrition, it's not just building blocks for your muscles, they're signaling molecules, they're called cytokines. And like
Yeah.
so like the whey itself is a cytokine. It's the whey, which is like one of the two main proteins in milk. Whey itself is a signaling molecules that stimulates your immune system. And like so like it's there's so many signaling molecules that also like that stimulate like the maturation of the gut lining of the calf, so that
Hmm.
it helps that calf grow and mature. So like these signaling molecules that stimulate the maturation of your gut would help too, like those extreme like triathletes and like Ironmans and like ultra marathons, and like you're under such physical stress for such a long period of time that your entire gut starts to break down. Something
Yeah.
like milk is perfect for that situation to help stimulate the regrowth so that you don't get sick from having all these gaps in your linings of your gut. Like this amazing food, let alone all the bacteria in there that you're also killing, along with these enzymes and signaling molecules. Like it's it's like all those bacteria. There's bacteria in there that drop the pH of the milk and make it so that pathogens struggle to grow.
Yeah.
There's enzymes in the milk that fight that have antimicrobial properties that fight pathogens in the milk. Like raw milk doesn't go bad. It just changes.
That's
So if
true. Yeah.
I just grabbed a bunch of raw milk, I left it on my counter in my kitchen at room temperature. And then a couple days later, the next day, I got some fat off the top, a sour cream. And then a day after that, I got cottage cheese. And I can just scoop that, I can just scoop it off the top, and underneath that is just your skim milk or whatever. But like, I got cottage cheese I can eat with a spoon, pour some honey on that. I guess the farmer's breakfast. Add some other bacteria to that, you can have yogurt or kefir, but it doesn't go bad. It just changes, and you can keep eating it. Whereas, like
That's
if you get pasteurized milk, it's devoid of life. There's a void there that needs to be filled, and like the bacteria that double the quickest, that grows the quickest, is E. coli. So your pathogenic bacteria will grow way faster than your healthy bacteria. So if you have
oh
pasteurized milk that's devoid of life, there's a void there. The first thing that'll grow there is pathogenic bacteria. That's why if you leave pasteurized milk out, it'll spoil. You can't drink that. That'll make you sick.
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I
So if
knew
there's any employees out there listening to this,
the
I will give you free raw milk for your entire life if you help me legalize raw milk.
Honestly though, man, like, because my wife and I, like, we we're always trying to find out what's best for our kids. We're always trying to feed them the best, man. And I remember we looked into like raw milk, and we just remember like we looked into like some of like the shutdowns, the closures, the seizures. Where I'm like, yo,
Yeah.
there was like a Quaker, and like in his commune, like an Amish community in like the States where they shut them down, hit him with like a multi-million-dollar fine. I'm like, holy shit, we just want some good milk, man. Like, we just don't want the shitty stuff that we find in the grocery store. We're just tired of it. And it's crazy to me. I don't know, man. Like this kind of gets into this conspiratorial side of things where I'm like, do they just not want us to be healthy? Because you're like, there's nothing but benefits here, yet for some reason it's suppressed by. I know it's not big pharma. I guess it's like the big food industries or whatever, where it's got to go through them, and they make the excuses that it's for your own safety, for your own good. But
Not
ironically,
safe.
it's yeah. Ironically, though, it's kind of like you look into it, and obviously you have as far as the science, and you're just like, no, it's like the complete opposite.
Yeah, I grew up when I was a kid, I drank raw milk. And then my mom learned about all the risks of drinking raw milk. And then for a
Yeah.
while, she started microwaving it to
Oh
pasteurize
my gosh.
microwave. And I was like, this is gross. And then she started
Yeah.
talking more about milk. And I was like, this tastes like water. I don't
Yeah.
want this either. So I didn't drink much milk since then. But like, um, yeah, I forget what you triggered or what you said that triggered me saying that. But it's like pasteurizing started back in the 1980s. And it started because there was a wave of 1,000 babies that died from drinking raw milk, but it wasn't truly milk. So what happened is around the 1980s, they started trying to produce milk cheaper, and like people started moving into the cities, and they would
Hmm.
have a warehouse next to a brewery, and they would stick a
Oh.
bunch of cows in this warehouse, and they would feed the cows all the waste products, all of the watery mush from the grains that were fermented and no longer needed, and they would just flop that over into the warehouse and feed the cows. And the environment was filthy. The cows were sick because they're supposed to be eating grass, like a high fibrous diet to be healthy, and they're just eating the slop called swill. Like it even sounds
Yeah, like it sounds nasty.
and like
You eat
this,
the swill.
and then the milk that they produced, it wasn't even white. They ended up adding chalk to this milk in order for it to look like milk. And they were feeding this to the kids raw. And not surprisingly, you have a bunch of sick animals in a filthy environment eating a crappy diet. People got sick from that. And then so that's when they started pasteurizing. So like now they swear up and down it's for your own safety. But I looked at because in the States, there's some states where you can still get raw milk.
Yeah.
There's data out there of how many people actually get sick from drinking raw milk. And there is the people do get sick from drinking raw milk. But if you look at the data since 2005, the degree, like the percentage of people that get sick has dropped by 74% since 2005. So like
Whoa.
people, like if you farm it and you produce it and you collect it in a way that's like you it's produced specifically for raw milk consumption and you're extra careful, you can do it in a way that keeps it safe, keeps it healthy. It's like
Yeah.
it's this massive decrease. And then I looked personally at the numbers from 2014 of the number of people that got sick, went to the hospital. And if you look at the ratios of people that got sick, and it's like only 3.2% of the population in the US drank raw milk. So you got to take that into account when you
Yeah.
look at the numbers of people that got sick drinking raw milk. But if I did the math on it, and I found that there's if you drink raw milk every day for an entire year, your chance of getting sick is 0.0075%. So
uh,
that works out to being one time every 13,000 years to get sick. And not a single person has died from drinking raw milk since 2014. 10 years of
wow.
raw milk consumption, not a single death. Compare that to alcohol. There's 140,000 deaths from alcohol every single year, but that's
Jeez.
legal.
Yeah.
Tobacco, you can get tobacco as long as it's enough. Or like or fast food or like candy, chocolate bars, Coca-Cola. You can get
Yeah.
that. You can feed that to your kids. You
Yep.
basically that's bad for your kids. But that causes chronic issues, not a hospitalization today. So
Yeah.
so it's like, why can we eat this shit? Sorry, part of my language. Like, why can we eat that stuff? And but like, but raw milk is too dangerous for us. Like,
No,
how about why don't we let us decide for ourselves what
yeah.
we put in our mouth? Like,
Dude,
you don't let us
yeah.
drink Coke and eat fast food. Let me decide whether I think it's worth the risk to drink raw milk.
Yeah. And I mean, you're preaching the choir, man, because I'm like, I am 100% there with you. And the thing is, more than anything, it's like, obviously, I'm an adult and I want to do what's best for me. But at the same time, like I want to give my kids the best. I don't want to give them pasteurized milk. Like I mean, a couple of years ago, it's funny because me and my wife were like, okay, we'll give them almond milk because that's supposed to be better. Looked into that, we're like, that doesn't make sense. Then we looked into like cashew milk, we're like, oh, this is also kind of weird. And then we're like, well, coconut milk is somewhat, but there's preservatives because it's not the same as if it fell from the tree, right? So I'm like, okay, well, it's still a little bit better. And now we settled like on a brand that's a grass fed organic, and we're like, well, you know what, this is the best we can do with what we have available to us. But if somebody came around and was like, hey, we'll give you raw milk, it's gonna be double the price, we'd be like, sold. Like we wouldn't even think about it because we've looked into what the science and the statistics actually kind of say about raw milk. And I'm like, wow, look at that. Like this, it's not pasteurized. It's loaded with all kinds of good things. Like you said, I mean, the other thing too was you were talking about colonizing the gut. And that was one thing that like me and my wife have been looking at, like the microbiome and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, there's so much to it. Like it's so much deeper than you think. And that's kind of why I always ask myself, why does it seem like they're feeding us poison? Like why is it the garbage can get through, but for some reason the stuff that's really good for you, like the raw honey, the raw milk, all the things that people really crave too. Because I think a lot more people are getting educated on these subjects, and they're like, dude, I don't want to eat the hyper palatable super processed foods anymore. Like I'm looking for something solid. I'm looking for something good, right? So to your point, I mean, somebody's out there, make the raw milk legal.
Right. That's right. I'll make it worth your time.
100%, man. But well, I
Yeah,
mean,
don't get me wrong, like milk is still an amazing product. Even pasteurized, it's still great. It's still all those minerals are still there. It's just they're just like somewhere between 38 and 80% decreased in either the absorption or the effectiveness of the vitamin or the
mhm,
mineral. Somewhere in there is, but they're all still there. Like it's still an amazing source of calories and nutrition and
mhm.
like healthy fats, lots of protein. It's not the living food that raw milk is.
Yeah. And that's a big difference too. It's kind of like, I mean, the key word there is living. It's kind of like when you sprout your own like different seeds and stuff, and you're really capturing, all that good stuff. It's like you mentioned before, there's that void of like that life force almost. And that's what that food really has. And I think it's just lacking in society. I mean, it's one of these things where we got to feed everybody too. So I understand that side of things where it's like, well, you know what? I mean, to do that, it takes a lot more effort versus, you're feeding a massive population, right? But that being said, any closing words, Sander? Went over a little bit, man. I'm sorry, but I had to keep
No,
you
not a
on the
problem.
subject.
No, I enjoyed our conversation. Gotta get all that anger about raw milk off my chest.
Oh man, I don't blame you, man.
No, as far as last words, no, um, I'm happy with everything that I was able to talk about today. So like, it's great. Like it's big, get intentional. I could say, how about that? Like, get
Mhm.
intentional about what you're eating in your diet, and like that's even just a great first step. Just be intentional about what you're eating. Like it makes a difference. Get those whole foods, get those healthy nutritions into you. Like, and like if you're being intentional, you're eating the same thing every day, and something doesn't work, well, then you have the power to change it and feel better. So it's just like if you have that consistency in your diet. So
Mhm.
yeah, you feel amazing.
100%, man. I agree with that. And again, all the links are in the show notes, guys. So again, be sure to check out moraleats.com, follow Sandra on Instagram, all that good stuff. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.